God is good, and with each day that passes, brings us a day closer to the launch of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. And today we are going to dive into what Joppa said on the new podcast Parting the Veil, which is an official show from Visionary Realms discussing Pantheon Rise of the Fallen in deep detail between the developers. First, I want to say it was an extremely entertaining podcast, and I'll do a full breakdown of everything within it. But if you want to hear the entire thing, I have a link in the description down below. It runs about 30 minutes, but today I want to talk exclusively about how while Joppa and Minus were talking, Joppa dropped this big old bean about mounts and this idea, this thing he claims they can implement that is a very big deal. Now, we all know that Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is avoiding flying mounts, and we have known that they don't want to just do mounts in a generic way. And up until this point, we kind of just theorized about features the mounts themselves could have to give them a sense of uniqueness. But it sounds like Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is going a direction I hadn't personally thought of. Let's hear what Joppa had to say, then let's deep dive and discuss the implications.
What does this mean? And it dawns on them more and more that this world is the most open world experience I've had in an MMORPG, and the layers of like implications that starts to have on the player. Or when we are able to unveil what we're hoping and planning to set up as a free mounting system, where you're able through a particular riding skill and other perhaps items and whatnot, you're able to mount certain creatures in the world freely and ride them for a period of time. And we'll talk more about how that opens up as a game system, as you invest more time in that. But
say what? All right, so what Joppa said there was a free mounting system where we can ride said mount depending on riding skills, which could get into skilling up that particular skill or getting a boost from certain pieces of gear. And once we mount this creature found out in the wilds of Terminus, we can ride it for a bit of time across the open world. Now, although this idea has been experimented with in an MMO before, I dare say not to the degree implicated here. Now let's hear from our sponsors and then talk about the angles and options available with this feature. Before we begin, I want to give a major shout out to the members of Napalm. I could not do this without you. You are the sponsors of this channel, and I thank you for your contribution, allowing me to keep making videos on MMOs, RPGs, and of course, puppets. If you are interested in becoming a member of Napalm, please click the join button down below. It is greatly appreciated. And a very special shout out to the Lords of Napalm, Bounty Code, We Tote Bitcoins, Jared Woodhouse, and Daimlos. Thank you for your highest tier membership. Okay, so a mounting system where if you have the skill, you can sneak up on and begin a taming process in order to hop on its back and traverse the open world of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen for a set period of time. Let's discuss the skill thing first and how one might possibly go through the process of taming the creature. Now, it's worth mentioning that this system would imply that all, if not most, of the four-legged creatures could somehow be tamed and ridden. So it will change the way you look out at the diverse creatures across areas, because besides the dangers they could impose, and besides the way you might traverse around or into them, now you will also be thinking of which you want to attempt to tame in order to get to your group or to the dungeon you are heading. Terminus is a very big world, and one of the exciting but also tedious parts of open large worlds is getting to the action, or getting back to town after the action, or getting to your party. Now, if it requires a skilling up system to mount, I would assume that some solo time might be spent in an attempt to skill your taming or riding up, where you would approach a four-legged creature and begin attempting and failing a lot as you skill it up. Now, you might have found a piece of gear that gives you a boost in that skill, but for the majority of us, we will just simply not be that lucky and we'll be starting at zero. So once appropriate level-wise, I am seeing us heading into a lower level area where the creature you are practicing on imposes no danger to you, and attempting it until successful in getting some skill points in, then slowly working your way upwards in tiers of mounts. Now, I can't help but look at this and think of The Legend of Zelda Zelda Breath of the Wild, where once on a mount, the taming process continues as the wild animal tries to buck you off and begins running wildly with you atop it, like a rodeo-style sort of minigame where you are trying to stay atop it and calm it. And if successful, the mount begins to behave to your controls and off you go. Now, Pantheon could do this in a more simple way. There could be various degrees of success, such as you make it atop the mount, however, on the lower end of the RNG based on your skill level versus the level of the creature. Therefore, you are thrown from the mount in a random direction, you take some damage, and possibly now you landed in a pile of mobs, putting you in danger depending on your level, their level, the skill level, and the aggressiveness. Or perhaps you land in a medium end of the RNG, and you don't get thrown off, but you fall off and the mount runs off. And then finally, on the upper end of the RNG, and based on your skill level and the level of the creature, etc., and you are successful and the mount is yours for a set duration, and the duration of time is based once again off of your skill level versus the level of the creature you have mounted. Now, there can also be options varying for how long you can ride the wild animal, and Visionary Realms will definitely have to figure that out, and also how fast said animal goes. And all of these things can be tweaked and tested, I would think, during the alpha and beta sessions and time periods for the most rewarding gameplay experience. Now, let's take a look at the full implications of exploration in Pantheon, because with climbing almost any surface and now a free mounting system, I want to point out a key tenet in the vision of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen as our upcoming MMO home, because it's all about the developers making systems within their world that fosters us to do things that create situations that become memorable and addicting and something we want to return to. This free mounting system accomplishes just as much in the exploration department as climbing does. It causes players to behave in a certain way, which, as I estimated things might work, will put the player in situations that cause more adventure, more memories, more opportunities for other game systems to come into play. These type of systems, such as the free mounting system, puts us in a certain mindset where we will likely say something like, I want to travel to X dungeon where my friends are as fast as possible. Let me try to tame and jump on the back of this jaguar. And then the player attempts that, fails miserably, and he just got too ambitious in the type of creature he attempted, is thrown into a pack of wild and quite hungry jaguars, and is now running with a quarter of his health left across the zone with a mob of jaguars chasing him. Or perhaps he is not too ambitious. He is successful, but barely, and that rush of adrenaline and big dopamine hit from pulling it off against the odds, and runs up to his group at the dungeon, bolstered and proud atop his jaguar. Both scenarios are memorable and exciting. This is the kind of world, the kind of experiences that live on long after the game has been exited back to the desktop and you are out and about in the real world. There are the type of things that make you want to return back into the world as soon as possible, and this is one of those things. And we aren't even going into how going out and taming and trying to skill up this free mount ability sounds to me to be a solo type experience, something to work on while your friends or guildmates aren't logged in. Side activity that gives you help for the future that is horizontal gameplay beyond simply leveling up. And the thoughts that are probably running through your mind right now are absolutely groundbreaking. Now, Joppa used the word item when discussing the process, and I already mentioned gear that might give you a +2 to riding or taming, however they decide to word that or do that, and perhaps actually there will be both skills separate of one another, riding being once you're atop the mount, taming be while you're trying to get atop the mount, but I think he might have meant a little more than just gear. Perhaps he meant saddles, created by players or found out in the world, leftovers maybe, from a creature being mounted before. For example, player 1 tames and rides a mount using a saddle, ride time is over, the creature is marked as having that saddle still, player 2 attempts to ride the creature, finds a saddle already on it, once used this time the saddle is gone. But, you know, I digress. What I am trying to say is that there could be items to help or to even be necessary to attempt this free mount mount system. So rope to help pull the creature your way, or certain foods to feed the mount and attempt to calm it and have it trust you. The options are endless how they would wish to do this, but regardless, it makes the system that much more rich in possibilities, and then it opens up things for crafting or all that kind of thing, and that adds a multiplayer experience to it because you need to get these items from either crafting yourself or reaching out to people who do craft it or buying it. Now, of course, Joppa ends this whole thing with saying there will be more discussion as that system develops, but wow, this was earth-shattering to my ears when I heard this and has my hype levels through the roof. Pantheon Rise of Fallen is truly to be an MMO experience that is more open world, more invested in giving us a terminus that is rich in content and possibilities, where we will write our own stories, our legends, and carve them out in so many different ways, with so many possibilities that have never been seen or experienced before in an MMO. Now, I know that many are tired of waiting. There will inevitably be comments below of people tired of the wait, tired of the process that is mandatory for a small development team to create an experience that even AAA companies have never done before. But I implore you, everyone, hang tight, drink the Kool-Aid for a little while, and await, because this absolute beast of an MMO experience is a day closer to launch today than it was yesterday, and that will continue to be true until we are logging in for our first full experience in our upcoming MMO Home, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, because it is an MMO Home and not a temporary experience. Let me know what you think of the free mount system, what ideas you think they will implement, if you agree with my assessment, in the comments down below, and please drop me a like to help with the algorithm. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing for more Pantheon content, MMORPGs, JRPGs, CRPGs, and even tabletop RPGs, all things RPG, because that's what we do here. And until next time, my friends, God bless and happy gaming.